Hey folks, thank you again for coming on to Back to Basics for Season 3. Today we're going to go and speak with Adrian Pereira, and we're going to find out what she's all about. But what we are mainly going to be talking about is branding, self-branding. And what does branding mean when it comes to self-branding or the company? There are different ways to go and do branding. What does a definition mean? What do the colors mean? What does the design mean? And why do we need to change it quite often? Those are the things we're going to discuss on this episode today. So why don't we listen to her on Back to Basics Season 3. Let's see. Hi, folks. Thank you again for coming on to Back to Basics, another week. We're almost done with Season 3. And we're going to have a blast with this episode today. We're going to talk about branding, as I said on my intro. Branding is one thing that we don't talk about enough. Well, that's not true, is it? Because we've talked about branding nonstop on Back to Basics. But the thing is that there are different flavors to each and every episode, and today there's another one, right? This guest of mine, I have stalked her very nicely on the Instagrams, the YouTubes, and LinkedIn, and she's really, really amazing. So let's stop talking to me. Let's go and talk to my guest and get to know her better. I think her name is Andrea, and then we're going to get to know her better. How about that? So, Adrian, thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
It's good to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you again. So, before we get into the basics of branding and what you are all about, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
It means getting back to what you started from and reminding yourself of who you are and what you're really doing.
Hmm.
I think that it's easy to overcomplicate, especially as we get bigger and bigger. And really, the basics should be easy to explain. It's not even about the elevator pitch or anything. It's more about the how do you connect with where you started from and where you want to go in simple ideas, simple language. I
Hmm.
think that's really what it is. When you can simplify it, you really know it.
Yeah, thank you again for that. But let me ask you a twisted question, because is it as simple as that? I mean, the answer that you just answered, because it
I think it
seems
is
like
though.
really.
I have built a business that we're on track for 25% year-over-year growth at 4 years in.
Hmm.
We're 7 figures, and I have a one-page business plan. I use a business canvas, marketing canvas every single year,
Hmm.
and it got me through the pandemic. It got me through launching. It's gotten me through growth, and I think that the reason it's worked is because it's simple.
Hmm.
It's simple, it's executable, it doesn't matter if you've been in the business for 10 years or for well, we're only 4 years old. But it doesn't matter if you've been here for 4 years or if you just started 2 months ago, it's understandable and
Hmm.
you can see it in action. So I think that basics really matter. They're foundational.
Yeah. Thank you again for explaining that, and thank you again for coming on the show and supporting me on this small podcast of mine. Let me ask you this, right? When it comes to marketing, when it comes to technology, when it comes to business, when it comes to branding, right? Um, where do we start from? Do we start from analyzing who your audience is going to be? Do we analyze what are we selling? How are we selling? Who are we selling to? Where do we start?
I like to start from who are you?
Okay.
That's it. Who are you? Because branding is really just sharing your personality in a package. So,
Hmm.
who are you? What matters to you? Who do you want to be? Are you what you want to be today, and or what do you want to be tomorrow? How do you create that path to that person?
Hmm.
So, branding to me is really just what does that look like? It's kind of the interview questions, but you can scale it up for a company or scale it down for an individual. So, interview questions meaning describe yourself.
Hmm.
What do you care about? What makes your heart flutter? What gets you excited and you want to just find a soapbox and talk for 3 hours about?
Hmm.
What do you not believe in? What makes your skin crawl?
Hmm.
That's your brand.
Hmm. So, thank you again for that. Are we talking branding from a business point of view or a employee point of view?
Both.
Both.
So,
So how?
rocket science branding is branded merchandise for companies.
Hmm.
But we can talk about branding on both levels because, especially when you're in a founder led company,
Hmm.
it starts from the founder's ethos. It starts from their ideologies and what they believe in. Where I mean, yes, they're creating a product, whether it's tangible or service based or a web based product. You're creating a product, but your ethos and ideologies and how you do business and how you recommend a product starts from you as a person.
Mm,
And then if you're an employee, how are you selling that product or how are you selling your work product?
mm,
Right. So you may be an employee who has the brand of, I can count on that person and they are always there. You may have a brand of, this person will take maybe a day to respond to the email or 2 days or 3 days, but I know it's going to be the most thoughtful damn email I've read for easily the last month.
mm.
So that's their brand. They take their time, but it is thoughtful and insightful. That's still branding.
But
How
let
do you
me
describe yourself?
but let me ask you this. Sorry to interrupt you. When a employee replies to an email or whatever the situation is,
Mhm.
a project, timeline, whatever it is, right? Is that considered loyalty or is that considered branding? Because they're two different things, aren't they? Or is it the same thing?
Let's talk about, what do you mean by loyalty?
Well, you just said, right? If
Mhm.
if you sent an email to me, like a Fortune
Mhm.
500 company sends an email to, let's say, a team member, and I reply back,
Mhm.
that's considered loyalty because I know my stuff. Why would I care about branding? Or is that the same thing?
I think that loyalty can be a part of a person's brand.
Hmm.
However, responding to an email isn't necessarily loyalty or a demonstration of loyalty, I
Okay.
think.
Okay.
I think that sometimes you can be reductive and say responding to the email is your job. You
Mm,
collected the paycheck. This
exactly.
is this is the job. Do your job, right? Or don't collect the paycheck. You could say that that's responding to the email. I think it's how you respond to the email that decides whether it's loyalty,
Hmm.
and that may be the brand. So, do you respond only to the question that is asked, or do you respond to the question and then you know that if they give a specific answer, that they should be fully informed with a follow up question or a follow up piece of information? That thoroughness is your brand.
Hmm.
That loyalty in giving that additional information is how you demonstrate it.
Hmm.
I
So,
think advocating is, it's a brand value.
so what you're saying is answering versus going a little beyond.
Mhm.
That's what you're saying, correct?
That's a personal brand. Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you again for explaining that because there's a lot of people who are employees of a 500 Fortune company. Honestly speaking, they don't really care. They're just getting paychecks, but then they don't realize
That's their
that
brand.
that's the brand that they're selling, and they don't realize
Mhm.
that, right?
Mhm. Yep. No, absolutely. And there are companies out there that teach their employees to be thorough and be thoughtful and say, take 5 more minutes. Or even, I know an organization who they have a policy of responding within 15 minutes. Whether it's just to acknowledge, I got your email and I'm going to dig deeper, I need some more time.
Mm,
To me, that is part of their brand. They're saying, I want you to know that you are being attended to, you are being cared for, you are seen.
mm,
That's their brand.
mm,
Fast responses.
mm,
And then there are other companies that don't. They'll respond when they have a thorough answer because their brand, their value is, we'll do all the work and we don't want to clutter up your email box with an email that says, got it, I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
mm. Yeah, that's true.
That's a person's brand. How
Mm,
do they do business? How do they interact? How do they do life?
mm. Yeah, thank you again for explaining from the employee point of view and what employers are looking for when it comes to employees. Uh,
Mhm.
let me ask you this: when it comes to slang words and business names and coloring and branding, how important is that? I mean, how do we start from there? I mean, what do we look for?
So that starts with, who do you want to be, and go back to those questions. So let's start with colors.
Hmm,
What kind of feeling are you trying to create when someone looks at your logo, when they look at your office space, when they look at the collateral you're creating or the merchandise you're giving out? There are studies and reports on what the different colors evoke in people. That blue tends to be a more calming color, that reds and oranges are more energizing and fiery, that green feels more grounded and natural.
hmm,
It's there is actual science, there are scientific studies behind it.
hmm,
So, I think that is how you start when you are branding in terms of color. You start by looking for what kinds of feelings are you trying to generate,
Hmm,
and then from there you choose your color.
hmm,
Same thing with the word choice. What kinds of feelings are you trying to generate? If you are a security company and you want people to know that you take their security very seriously, then you're going to look for language that leans towards the feeling of safety, of security, of seriousness, professionalism, um, reliability. And so you're going to choose those kinds of words. You're not going to say, our security company is really cool. We hire really cool, chill people. You're going to say, no, we hire very respectable, responsible people.
hmm,
So that's how it goes on from there in terms of the tone when you're writing your website, when you're writing your collateral, when you're writing your deck, your pitch deck.
hmm,
Everything is going to come from how do you want people to feel?
hmm. Yeah. Thank you again for that.
Mhm,
Let me ask you this question here. When it comes to fast food places, let's say McDonald's, let's
mhm,
say Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, they keep on changing their design. Is it because the
mhm.
feeling is a little different today versus, I don't know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Or
So,
what do you think of that part?
in 20 to 30 years, yes, you do sometimes change your design. You refresh your brand.
Hmm,
But doing a new color scheme or doing a new campaign is really what's happening most of the time.
hmm,
Those are campaigns. The brand values have not necessarily changed.
hmm,
McDonald's has always stood for fast, affordable, fresh, right?
hmm,
That was true in the 80s, it's true today. That hasn't changed.
hmm,
And so when you look at their color scheme, they're still using red and yellow. It
hmm.
hasn't changed. Fast, affordable, fresh
That's right.
still is underlying in all of their language,
Hmm,
in all of their photography, even the way they take their photos.
hmm. So you're saying that the color feeling has changed, but not the essence of McDonald's,
Mhm.
because the
Yes.
essence of McDonald's is fast. I'm sorry, furious, because that's the only word comes in my mind. But I
Uh-huh.
think that's just what it is, right? So thank you
Yeah.
again for that. So do you think that you are going to be changing the essence, maybe in, I don't know, 5 years from now? Because it seems like every 10 years everyone is changing, right?
Well, generations are changing too, and priorities for a generation are changing. Sustainability is huge, whereas, let's talk about corporate gifting. That's an easy example for me, right? Because I'm a merchandise agency, a swag agency.
Mm,
Um, 5 years ago, when we were doing boxes and mailers and shipping things to people directly, extensive packaging, really beautiful packaging, expensive packaging was huge. And having really good quality packaging is still very common today. It's
mm,
still valued today, but today we go off of more sustainable packaging.
mm,
So, whereas 5 years ago we would have said, pull out all the stops. I know we're shipping a $5 product, but I want $50 worth of packaging because I want it to be the most beautiful box you've ever seen. Today we're saying, okay, how can we do that? But can we maybe use post consumer recycled waste paper? Can we print with soy inks so it can be compostable?
mm,
So that's also an example of how the values have not really changed.
mm.
The high focus on quality, on aesthetic are still there, but the way that we go about it has changed.
Hmm. Yeah, that actually makes sense, right? Because now we're thinking of plastic bags and no
Mhm.
plastic bags, right?
Yes.
Or even disposables. Instead of plastic spoons, we're doing wood spoons. Not
Mhm.
even wood,
Compostable. Well, I
compostable,
think
right?
with spoons, it's more gonna be compostable plastics, recycled plastics.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So which means that we're getting environmental, friendly
Mhm.
nowadays versus the business aspect of it, because we need to make sure that we're kind of relatable to a lot of different people, right?
But
Because
it is business.
really,
It is the business aspect of it, yes,
okay.
because when you think about who your demographic is and who you're trying to connect with,
Mm,
the demographic that makes sense for you, the demographic you are targeting,
mm,
they care about sustainability, about climate change, about recyclability, etc., about reducing waste.
mm.
And so if you're going after those people, then it's a demonstration of your commitment to their values when you adjust to a compostable, recyclable, recycled material
Mm,
spoon.
mm,
It's not that you're just changing because you have to. Nobody's standing there with a pitchfork.
mm,
It's a desire to show that demographic that your values are aligned. So that way they feel like they can come to you and that you will nourish them or
mm.
support their needs.
That actually makes me think a little that how often do you do surveys? Because you need to be a little on top of everything every single year
Mhm.
almost, right? Is that a true statement when it comes to surveys?
So when it comes to what? I'm sorry?
Surveys.
Surveys? So I do annual surveys with my clients in terms of what are your priorities, what has changed in your brand values, has anything changed in your brand this year?
Mm,
And sometimes, they'll say, last year we had a logo that had 10 colors and we're reducing it down to 9. It was just too colorful. Maybe that happens. More likely, it's that the new products are coming out,
mm,
that we're refreshing this old product with new features, that
mm,
we're going after a new market, or we're trying to connect with our customers in a different way.
mm,
But when it comes to surveys in general, there are a lot of companies out there that are already doing that legwork, and it's just a matter of looking for those studies and asking the questions.
mm,
I think that natural curiosity
mm.
is really important. I mean, if you don't mind, we're talking about going back to basics here. Going back to basics when you were a child was to ask all of the questions, to ask the questions and not have any assumptions and wonder why. And I think that surveys answer that. I think it's a very important part of business.
Mm. Yeah, actually, it is, isn't it? Because when you first start your branding, you need to ask the certain questions, but then after a certain time, I think it kind of changes, just like what you just said, right? I
Well,
mean, you go from 11 colors to 9 colors, and then your design kind of changes also
mhm.
because now you got new products coming up too. So,
But it all changes. That's the natural evolution of a business.
mm,
Right? Just as a natural evolution of people. If you want to talk about employees instead of a company, I regularly think about, goodness gracious, I hope the people who knew me in 6th grade do not think I am still that ridiculous today. I've got some better sense than I did when I was, 12 years old. And the same thing applies for a company too. As a company grows, as they have an idea of who their target market is, but now they really know who it is. Other companies may close or other companies may enter the market. And so they are adjusting their product value, product offerings. They're
mm,
adding on more features. And now all of a sudden, whereas before they were an excellent fit for a startup,
mm.
today, based upon the competition in the market, they're a better fit for an enterprise model company.
Yeah, thank you again for explaining that. And branding is one thing which I can talk for hours because it took
Mhm.
me a long time to design the way I wanted to design my medium, my podcast, my business, my consulting. We can talk that offline, but it's one of the things that I think needs to be asked every single time, and it changes every single time. But the thing is, the I think the word that I'm looking for is the real Bible.
Mhm.
The rules of the business is still essence is still the
That
same.
should
So
not change. That should
that's
not change regularly.
exactly
And that's not to say you may not need to revisit it because the employees you had when the company started in 1950
right.
are more than likely not going to be the employees that you have today. And so you may need to revisit, are we actually living what we said we were setting out to do?
Hmm,
Are we doing that in the way that is appreciated in today's market?
hmm,
So I think that revisiting that is really interesting and maybe even updating the language of how you express that.
hmm,
Um, but the core values, like core values meaning doing the right thing. What my favorite core value for rocket science branding is we respectfully disagree. And
hmm,
so maybe we'll say this differently in 5 years or in 10 years.
hmm,
But the core value inside of that is that if something doesn't sit right, I want you to respectfully disagree. I want to respectfully disagree. I want to see something, say something. I
Mm,
want to make sure that we are doing the best work possible every single time. And so the way we do that is we respectfully disagree.
mm,
And so again, maybe we'll say that differently in 10 years.
of
But
course.
the idea of pushing for the best work by not just sitting by and being compliant
Mm.
because it's easy, um, that doesn't change.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into one more question right before
Mhm,
the this special segment that I have for season three. One quick question is there's a pizza place in New York City which I've been going for years, and
mhm,
every time I go there, okay, the essence is still the same, everything is still the same, and they're still doing the same thing over and over again for the last 60 years. You know, they pay by cash. They have this pizza place every single time, and they're jam packed. So they have never really changed anything when it comes to logo, design, or even the style of the pizza.
mhm.
So what are your thoughts on that part? Do you think that we do need to
What's wrong with
change?
that?
Yeah,
That's my immediate thought is, "What's wrong with that?" There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
They established a brand, the brand has been working, the brand is connected to their customers. Um, don't change things just because you can.
mm. Why should we, right? And
Yeah.
maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
And that's the thing is if can you answer a good not you obviously, but like can the brand answer, can the ownership or the employees answer, the leadership answer why they should change the brand? What is not working?
Hmm.
If everything's working, why touch it?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to make sure that people they understand that it's not needed every
No.
single time that you need to change it. So that's my point. So I think it
Mhm.
really depends on what type of business you're trying to sell too. Uh,
I think so, and I think natural evolution is
mm,
healthy, right? We
mm,
grow as human beings. A business should grow also. Maybe the product you're selling grows as well, or maybe you have a reputation with a certain age group, and as that age group ages, you're not going to be as relevant to the new 20-year-olds.
that's
You
right.
now fit in better with the 30-year-olds, and in 10 years, you'll fit in better with the 40-year-olds. And if that's where you want the business to continue going, yes, there is an end in sight. You're going to age out at a certain point with life expectancy, but if that's what you want, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't have to be fixed.
Mm, yeah, thank you again for explaining that, and thank you for that. So now we have a new segment that we started on season three, which is the rapid fire round. In this
Okay.
rapid fire round, we have some words and sentences, whatever, and whatever pops in your head, we'll just go from there. Are you game
Okie
with that?
dokie. There we go. Let's
Aw-
go.
Awesome. So the first one is going to be, "Who are you?"
Oh gosh. Who am I? That's a hard question. You had to start with the hard one. My name is Andrea Pereira. I am in Southern California. I own Rocket Science Branding. We are an intentional and thoughtful swag merch agency that strives to connect people. On a personal level, I live here in Southern California. I've got one dog, and I love yoga. And I love thinking about things. I love overthinking about things. I like having interesting conversations.
Awesome. Okay. The next one is going to be employer versus employee.
Depends on the organization. I can't answer that one straight. I mean, have you been at an unhealthy organization? Because I don't want to be an employee there. I want to be the employer. Exactly, right? I want to be the employer who can change that. But then at the same time, too, um, if I worked at an amazing company, rocket science branding, maybe I wouldn't mind being an employee.
Okay. The next one is going to be loyalty versus paycheck.
Loyalty every day, every single day.
But then paychecks is also loyalty too.
I don't think paychecks are loyalty.
Well, employers are giving you paycheck
They
bi-weekly,
are.
monthly, whatever. So isn't that
Mhm.
loyalty from the employers?
I think that loyalty is something that is earned, just like a paycheck is earned. However, I think that loyalty is not something that is necessarily quid pro quo and can be quantified.
Okay.
I'm loyal to my friends when they don't pay me, eh, but at the same time, too, I do collect a paycheck, but I did the work to earn that consistently.
Okay. So I'm gonna go and test you when it comes to colors.
Okay.
Okay. So whatever word comes out of these colors, just let me know. Okay.
Okay.
Red,
Fire.
blue,
Calm.
green,
Natural.
orange,
Fire.
purple,
Royal.
black,
Dark.
white.
Clean.
Okay. These are the colors that Back to Basic actually has.
Mhm.
They're very, very different meanings for Back to Basic, so we can take that offline also.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'd love to actually. That'd be fun.
Awesome. The next one is going to be refresh.
Okay. What do I think of when I think of the word refresh?
Hmm.
The first question I want to ask is it necessary?
I think that's an answer more than
I
a question.
know. I know. I know. But okay, so when you say the word refresh, I want to ask is it I'm okay with an awkward silence.
I don't know. I don't know the
We
answer.
could keep this going.
We can go on for this. Okay. Merchandise
Hmm. Product.
product. Okay.
Mhm.
Demographic versus value graphic.
Oh, psychographics or value graphics. Oh, God. Both are equally fascinating. I prefer to live in the psychographics or value graphics personally, but I love talking about both. That can be another hour-long conversation right there.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it has. And I've talked about this in one of my shows, actually. Uh,
Mhm.
the other one is going to be Elon Musk,
Performer.
performer. Okay.
Mhm.
You are
Content.
okay. And the last one is going to be back to basics.
I okay, this one's not gonna be a single word.
Okay.
Um, but when I hear back to basics, I think reminders of things you already know but are so easy to overlook in regular life because we get so caught up in the doing
Hmm.
that we forget that sometimes just get back to basics. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
Remember why you're doing it. Remember who you're doing it for.
Hmm. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you again for playing the rapid fire round
Of
for
course.
back to basics. And hopefully, I didn't really stomp you. I think I did stomp you on.
You did. You did. I think we had one.
Okay. So let me ask you this, and this is really the groundbreaking for me is we live in a world of diversity, and we've heard about this word many many times, right? And
Hmm.
we're not even talking about color, we're not even talking about age, we're not talking about we're just talking about everything,
Okay.
right? uh, so do you think that we should be looking from a demographic point of view or the value graphic? Because I think value graphic is more on the human level, human
Hmm.
behavior, to be honestly. So what are your
Value
thoughts on that
graphic.
part? Yeah.
I think value graphic every single time.
Hmm.
Um, I think that thinking in terms of gender, color, um, ethnicity is how we become reductive. I think that when it comes to diversity, um, diversity is about accepting differences to the point where they don't really matter in a way because we're focused on doing good work. We're focused on being good people.
Hmm.
Um, and when you start to bring more demographics into it, I think we lose sight of the value graphics. And that's not to say that, demographics are wrong. There are certain products, or I'll give an example that I love to give actually, because it is so extremist. Um, I would question a company who is designing and selling baby diaper bags, and they are doing a campaign that targets 8-year-old boys.
Hmm.
Right?
Okay.
Like that's not the demographic because of physical capability, because of the age group. It doesn't make sense. So so that's where again I would go back to do demographics always make sense? No. Like you do have to look at them sometimes. You
Hmm.
have to be considerate of them.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, when you're creating a product, when you're creating a service, when you're deciding who you want to be on a personal level, and this comes back to personal branding,
Hmm.
who you want to be, I think value graphics matter more. That's who we connect with in our clients, that's who we connect with as our friends.
Hmm.
When you choose your family, it's values.
Hmm. That is actually very true because, um, me personally, I've gone with value graphic more than demographic.
Mhm.
Because what happens is that when you're selling a product, let's say if I'm selling my podcast, I'm not really going to a certain demographic world or gender world or
Mhm.
age group, right? I think we're thinking more on the human level as to are we on the same page when it comes to back to basics, right? Uh,
Mhm.
because it could be kids, because people have asked me many times that who's your audience, and my audience is pretty much everybody.
But
But
it's not everybody, right?
right,
I
it's not.
mean, we say it crosses demographics,
Yeah,
but it's people who value certain things.
exactly my point. So when I actually got that report, then obviously there's men and women and kids and different
Mhm.
age groups. So then we are living in a demographic world, but we want to be in a value graphic. So
Yes.
is that a, I don't know, is that an
I like how
oxymoron?
you said that.
Is that
No, I
is that
love how you said that. That's exactly it. We are so used to scientifically measuring demographics
yeah.
that we are not measuring enough. We do to some extent, but we're not enough measuring value graphics. And I think that's Uh, partially because that's what we've always done,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And I think it's also partially because it's what's easier. It's
mm.
easier to look at an individual and say your physical features are more likely to match with a female than with a male. Like,
Exactly.
I mean, AI and technology can do that, but
That's right.
you don't know how I identify or you don't know what my values are, right? We just look at snapshots.
That's right.
I think the other thing too that plays heavily into value graphics that you really can't see in demographics is, and this is more of a DEIB idea, but it's pulling people up.
Mm,
So you may have a listener who's 14 years old. I may have someone who doesn't really meet the qualifications for what I'm looking for, but they want to learn, they want to do better.
mm.
And that really, I think, is very important when we are thinking about what we're looking for, whether it's in a client, whether it's in a partner, whether it's in who is our podcast for? Our podcast is for people who value these things.
Mm,
Maybe they don't have a $50 million business today, but that's what they're working on growing. And don't you need to know where you're going in order to get there? I
mm.
mean, you may get there, but it sure is a heck of a lot easier when you're able to draw a map.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for an amazing time on Back to Basics. You know, you explaining about the branding and what you stand for, and thank you again for being a sport. But before you leave today, do you have any last words for my Back to Basic listeners and my viewers? And how is your journey on Back to Basics too? On top of that,
Oh my goodness. Okay. Message that I would love to share is branding and values is not just about you. It's about how you connect with others. So, whether you're branding your company or you're branding yourself and you're really being intentional about it, it's not just thinking about what are my brand values, but also who am I trying to connect with and where do our values intersect? That's what branding really is.
awesome, awesome. Thank you again for being coming on Back to Basics, supporting me on the small podcast that I have, and trying to build as much as I can for my branding and for
Huge
my
part.
show and my values too. On top of that,
Thank you so much for having me.
thank
Time
you.
flew. Thank you.
Time flew. Thank you. So, guys, we spoke with our guest today, didn't we? And we talked about the value graphic. We talked about demographic. We talked about many different things. And I definitely stomped her on a few questions on the rapid fire round. And hopefully she'll forgive me for that. You know, as usual, as always, there is a quote of the day. And hopefully my guest will like the quote of the day. The quote is brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. You know, the thing is that we don't know what those brandings are. I mean, look at Fortune 500 companies. I mean, they have gone through many changes in order to get to that idea, whatever that idea is. But people, they think something different, don't they? That's the perception. Now, as usual, as always, what do we always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today. Guys, we're almost done with season 3. Give me all the love and support on my show, and I will see you next week on Back to Basics. How was that for you?
Oh my gosh, that was such fun. I did get stumped. I just did not know where to go. I don't even remember what the question was at this point, but you totally got me.
Really? On which
Yeah.
one? On who are you, or
Oh, I was not prepared for that one either.
I think you were stomped on refresh.
I think so. Maybe I.
Hi guys, thank you again for tuning in to Back to Basics and listening to the excellent episode that we had today with our guest. You know, with your love and support, we do need you to at least rate our show, review our show, because it does make us stronger day by day, week by week, as I usually say on my episodes. And there are 3 things in this episode that it makes a hit for me, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. So guys, take care, God bless, and remember, everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and see you next time on Back to Basics.